Good evening. I am the Chair of Public Service and Transportation, Emmanuel Remy. I am here to call to order this public hearing in regards to some revised parking code revisions. The intention of the public hearing is to review parking code revisions for the City of Columbus. There will be an opportunity to provide public testimony. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Please fill out a speaker slip. We will accept speaker slips until the end of the presentations. In order to get through all of the speakers, we will not be able to address some of your questions completely. However, we will have staff from the Department of Public Service and City Council continue to follow up with you. The end of the meeting tonight is not the end of these conversations. We look forward to working with you on these and other issues as it relates to transportation and parking. Tonight, we will begin discussing parking services code revisions within the City of Columbus and how they will be implemented moving forward. I would also like to note that this hearing is not to discuss any one individual parking plan, specifically plans like were just undertaken in the Short North parking area. The Parking Services Code revisions is an update that concern the city at large. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Council Pro Tem Stenziano, Council President Hardin, Councilmember Mitch Brown for attending this hearing this evening. As is the case with any robust and growing city in the United States, and specifically here in Columbus, our growth creates challenges in some areas. And when we were looking at some of the code structures, we noticed that some of our code hasn't been touched for decades, not reflecting what's going on currently within our communities and also not reflecting what the reality is. For instance, one of the code revisions is to reduce a 23-foot space down to 20. We were pretty much doing that anyway, and the cars have gotten a lot smaller than when that code was first originally intended to accept cars from the 60s and 70s. So we are bringing our parking ordinances into line with what we think that the city needs. I think we've come up with a good plan. I appreciate our director, or assistant director for parking services, Robert Farron, being here and providing his expertise to the City of Columbus. A few key points to talk about are the creation of a division of parking services. We want to continue to increase mobility options by bringing in additional car share services. So we will have some testimony presented tonight from Zipcars, a new vendor within the city. We want to talk about the ability to do certain things for permit parking, create benefit districts so that the money that we do make in those areas can be returned back to those areas for mobility options. And then, of course, we want to update the definitions within the code. So I will introduce our speakers this evening. We have our Assistant Director for Parking Services, Robert Farron, Commander Joseph Schrader with the Department of Public Safety and the Columbus Police Department, and Amanda Ford, our management analyst for the Department of Public Service, who will share a few remarks. So our target date for final passage will be the 21st of May. We had a first read this past Monday, and so we will be very eager to get public testimony. As it was stated earlier, you can fill out a speaker slip through the presentations, and then we will ask you to come up to speak at that point. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our Assistant Director for Parking Services, Robert Farron.
Thank you, Chair Remy, Council Members Pro Tem Stenziano, Council President Hardin, Council Member Mitch Brown. Thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to explain these parking code changes. The organization of the presentation, a short presentation this afternoon. First, we're going to talk about why we are revising these codes, talk about code versus policies and programs, and then start to get into each code revision. We've organized them by categories, administrative changes, parking management tools, and mobility tools. To start out, I want to talk about why we're here revising the code. Our parking code dates back 20 plus years, in some cases even longer. Since then, our transportation system has changed dramatically. We need new tools to respond to the growth and demand that, Columbus is seeing, especially in our inner ring neighborhoods. We want to introduce national best practices to Columbus when it comes to parking and transportation demand management. Our goal through these code changes is to provide access and to expand mobility options for all user groups in the city of Columbus. I want to talk briefly about the code, why we're changing the code, and then the difference between that and policies and programs. The code for us in parking authorizes us to implement the various programs we implement on a day-to-day basis. They're very much enforcement-based. What can we write a ticket for, or what can we not write a ticket for? When it comes to parking, active parking enforcement is one of our best tools to gain compliance and to make sure that we're managing parking appropriately. Because of that, enforcement and then citations are critical. That is different than our policies and programs that many people feel on a day-to-day basis. So those policies and programs live in Public Service Department rules and regulations. They govern establishing management strategies where we put restrictions, where we price parking, where we issue permits. Those rules and regulations help set fees, whether they're for meter rates, permit fees, car share fees, valet, et cetera. The permit application processes for our various permit programs are governed by these rules and regulation. Generally, what goes where for how much and what time of day is in those rules and regulations. Code helps us, again, to authorize to implement these programs. With that, I'll jump into administrative revisions. We're making quite a few revisions to the code. We've organized them into 3 different sections. I'm not going to go line by line through these. We have summarized them. The first one is administrative revisions, and mainly we are creating a new division for parking services. Those are in sections 29.01, .031, .033, and 2150.04. These changes recognize the importance of parking within our transportation system. They will create structural efficiencies within parking. Right now, we're spread across multiple divisions, multiple areas of the city. This will give us the ability to rebrand parking. Currently, people know us as the PVB. People know us as the area that writes tickets. We provide a lot more value than that. This will allow us to rebrand parking. It'll update some staff classifications that are no longer in use. And these division changes would take place as part of the budget for the 2019 budget. So these would actually be effective later on in December of 2018. Additional administrative revisions. We are looking to align current policy with state and local regulations. Those are in sections 2150.01, 02, 10, and 2151.21. We're updating our infraction table for new citations that I'll get to in a minute. We are reflecting our state regulations regarding how many citations are issued and when you are put on a registration block and when your vehicle can be impounded. And we are reflecting state regulations regarding no front plate. State regulations were changed last year, the year before. Having no front plate is an offense, but it's a secondary offense, and we want to update our code to reflect that. Other administrative changes under 2151.21 that I'd like to highlight is regarding our ADA enforcement. So we are looking to strengthen our ADA enforcement. Currently, we issue citations for those vehicles that are parked in ADA spaces, whether it's signed or metered. These changes would help strengthen that enforcement by also issuing a ticket for failure to display a hang tag. Nationally, in our industry and parking, there's a challenge with fraudulent use of ADA placards. ADA placards often gain you extended time or free parking. 50% of all of our ADA citations were contested over the last 2 years, 2016 and 2017. And of those, almost 80% were dismissed. Many people will come into our office and dismiss their will end up appealing their citation because they forgot to didn't actually have their placard displayed properly. People will then bring a placard that is valid, may be valid, may not be. We end up dismissing those tickets because if we see a placard, that's certainly enough evidence for us to dismiss it. That being said, it is a state requirement that you actually display your placard. We hope by issuing both the citation for ADA as well as failure to display will help cut down on that fraudulent use of placards, will help cut down on the amount of staff time with people coming through our system, disputing those tickets, and then again, make those spaces available for the people that need it. ADA parking is critical for, certainly for those that need it, and again, we want to make sure that those people that need it have that space. Going to parking management tools, we have a couple different code changes. One is to encourage parking turnover to increase citizen access. It's under sections 2105.16, 2151.26, and 2155.05. We are clarifying a parking violation for parking in more than one space. As was mentioned before, currently our code states that parking spaces need to be 23 feet in length. Most of our spaces are between 18 and 20 feet. Most vehicles are between 17 and 18 feet long. We're also making sure that people aren't double parking, not parking against the traffic lane, but parking multiple cars in one metered space. We want to allow for enforcement of non-metered time limit areas. There's additional tools in the parking management toolbox that we can use to help create turnover. The reason why we number one for turnover is to encourage access to businesses and to residents. When we don't have signs, that means people can park for up to 72 hours without moving. Currently in our code, we do not have the ability to enforce just time-limited parking. Great example is Parsons Avenue, an area that's seeing redevelopment, an area that we wouldn't quite start charging for parking with the installation of meters, but we would want to encourage turnover in front of coffee shops, bookstores, et cetera. By instituting just 2 or 3 hour parking, that would be beneficial to the businesses. So that's under 2151.26 where we'd be including overtime parking. And then we're clarifying meter non-payment. That's a current citation we issue. If you don't pay the meter, then we're certainly going to give you a ticket. Currently, the language is a little bit vague. We're clarifying that to very much mean if you do not deposit the required funds, you would then receive a ticket. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Commander Joseph Schrader to talk about the next section.
Thank you. I'm going to briefly touch base on 2151.09. It's the maximum continuous parking in one location for excess of 72 hours. As a patrol response for dispatch calls for service as well as pickup calls, for 2016 and 2017, we've averaged over 4,300 calls each year. And we've also averaged 2,000 calls on 311 from neighborhoods, citizens calling in about citizens leaving their cars out on the street in excess of 72 hours. Each of these runs, the normal length of time that the officers spend on that is in excess of 30 minutes. And what we're finding, especially in my bureau, when the community liaison officers go out in response to many of these 311 calls, is many of these vehicles are only being moved a few inches. So they're within the code by moving the car 3 to 4 inches. So we're hoping that by changing this to 75 feet, we're going to force the people to get their cars up and running and move them out of that spot so it doesn't bring the neighborhood down on that. And when I spoke to my liaison officers about this issue, they forwarded to me this video that we're about ready to play that kind of demonstrates what our citizens are having to face in some of their neighborhoods. And this is a vehicle where his tires have been marked for 72 hours, and in many cases, sometimes the tires are flat, the car is not really drivable, it's been sitting for long periods of time, dust is on it, Sometimes it doesn't even have a transmission or even engine parts are missing. And this is, by doing this, technically as the law stands now, they're able to be within the code. So we're hoping that this new change will make it a little stricter for these citizens. Thank you.
We were all looking at this video and wondering why the individual kept getting out of their car. He's turning the steering wheel just to make sure that the car doesn't run up on the curb. This is certainly an extreme example. However, in most cities, it is best practice to define what moving is. And because we have not historically defined what moving is in our city code, people can literally push, pull, or in this case, chain an inoperable vehicle to an operable vehicle and then move it. As was stated before, the enforcement is done reactively. We are not proactively going around the city marking vehicles for 72 hours. These are based on call volume. These are based on complaint. 72-hour rule is a fairly consistent rule nationally. Most people don't know about it, though. So this is it's very much reactive. It's based on call. It's to get those vehicles that are otherwise just sitting for days, weeks, and months on end, get those vehicles off the street. So that, again, we have access for those that actually need the space.
All right, I'll comment on that. For those of us that have been community leaders, I mean, this has long been an issue that we've wanted to tackle. I see my police liaison for my community, Scott Klinger, here today. Certainly, we are all, anybody that's been a community leader knows that people do this quite commonly, and generally they don't even have to tow it, they just push it a few inches. And so I think it's a right step in the right direction to provide relief to the community, and so looking forward to this particular aspect.
Moving on to additional parking management tools. This category is proactively managing parking in high-demand areas. This is 2105.21, 2151.18. This edit to the existing residential parking permit code provides flexibility in issuing permits to multiple user groups. This code itself does not govern the administration of permit programs. That is governed by rules and regulations that are actually being revised and have been posted on our website for review. Those rules and regulations define what user is prioritized in which area. It also defines the fees that are set for permits as well as the process. These specific revisions give us that flexibility that actually we already have in the rules and regulations. Currently, under the permit parking program, we issue permits to residents, resident guests, as well as employees, especially in the Short North area and other high-demand areas. Another parking management tool is to create mobile payment zones and enhance our meters. These are definition changes. Our current definition of meters includes terms like coins, even though we've taken credit card for over 8 years now, almost 8 years. So we've gone through and made some edits to change coin to funds, and also been very explicitly clear as to what a meter is, which could be a single space meter, a multi-space meter, or also a mobile payment application. Finally, our last category is mobility tools, and in my mind is one of the more exciting ones. Again, most of the code we talk about is writing a ticket. The mobility tools get to more of the policy. We are looking to develop demand management tools to increase options, specifically in sections 2101.58, 2105.27, and 2151.25. Specifically, this introduces round-trip dedicated space car sharing operations. These edits do give us the ability to write a citation in a space that would be marked for car share vehicle parking only. This goal in particular supports the goal of increasing options and helping to reduce parking demand. For us, in order for us to continue to grow in a sensible and sustainable way, we need to look at urban infill. We need to look at other ways to develop, and for that, we need to give people options. We cannot have the only option in Columbus being driving from point A to point B in a single occupancy vehicle. This helps get us to the goal of providing additional options with bringing in car share. We currently have Car2Go. This will bring in another car share operator. And with that, I am going to pass it off to Amanda Ford to talk specifically about Zipcar.
Thank you. Zipcar could not be here this evening to be a part of our hearing. They had some other circumstances going on, but we did want to talk briefly about what they do bring to Columbus. So obviously, they're looking to expand. They do have some vehicles currently in Columbus in the university and airport area, but they're looking to expand in the downtown, German Village, and Short North areas. Obviously, they'd like to have 2 spaces in each one of those neighborhoods, so they've given us some idea of where they would like to be. We looked for areas where there's high residential, but also commercial attractions in those areas as well, so these spaces would be highly visible, but not directly related or directly in front of a business, so that we're not impacting that business in a any type of negative way. But obviously, we know there's lots of benefits to car share, and some of the highlights are 1 car share space can take up to 13 personal vehicles from your system, your car system, 1.6 billion pounds of carbon reduction by car share members annually, 70% reduction in personal transportation expenses, and 60% less driving for car share vehicles than personal vehicles. So obviously, they do bring a benefit to Columbus and hopefully can expand on car share in general. I do want to read a statement from Zipcar as part of the hearing tonight, since they couldn't be here to talk a little more about their services. Zipcar is the world's leading car-sharing network, driven by a mission to enable simple and responsible urban living. With more than 1 million members worldwide and vehicles in 500 cities and towns, Zipcar enables its members to live car-free or car-light by providing on-demand access to wheels when you need them. After members join, they have universal access to more than 12,000 vehicles in Zipcar's global fleet, which consists of 60 makes and models and hundreds of locations, typically no more than a 5-minute walk from home. Members tap their Zip card on the windshield to lock or unlock the car, and the keys are inside. Gas, insurance, maintenance, and 180 miles of driving are included in each reservation. Zipcar supports the proposed code changes for parking services to allow for the operation of round-trip dedicated car-sharing spaces. Currently, Zipcar operates a small fleet of 6 vehicles in Columbus, 2 at the John Glenn International Airport and 4 near the Ohio State University. Changes to city code allowing highly visible on-street operation would help to increase our presence in Columbus and consequently our positive impact on the city. In the 12 months, this small fleet has enabled more than 1,000 trips, totaling more than 72,000 miles. An expanded fleet would enable Zipcar to serve more Columbus residents as they live car-free and car-light lifestyles. Zipcar's 2017 North American Transportation Survey illustrates the positive impact Zipcar has on local communities. 76% of Zipcar members do not own a car. 48% of members have postponed buying or leasing a car as a result of Zipcar, and 62% of Zip trips have at least 2 people in the vehicle. Independent research has found that each Zipcar eliminates the need for up to 13 personally owned vehicles on the road. After joining Zipcar, households see a monthly reduction of transportation expenses by 70% and a personal reduction of carbon emissions by up to 16,000 pounds per year. Public partnerships enable Zipcar to grow the mobility ecosystem, expand into underserved areas, enable simple and responsible urban living. We are pleased to offer our support to these code changes and welcome the opportunity to work with local leaders to make Columbus a better place to live.
Thank you very much. I see one of my colleagues, Council President Pro Tem, has a question.
Thank you, Chair Remy, and I apologize because I think you're just the messenger on Zipcar. Confused if they're suggesting that without these code changes, they can't expand in the market, and how Car2Go can figure that out, but Zipcar isn't able to. And then my other concern, since I'll just throw it out there, why aren't we encouraging Zipcar and Car2Go to use the parking garages? As someone who looks for parking meters in the Short North, always frustrated when there's currently a Car2Go taking up a lot of room that a bigger car could probably get into.
Thank you for those questions, Councilmember Cinziano. So to start, the Zipcar operates a dedicated space round-trip model. There's 2 different kinds of car share models nationally. There's the free float point-to-point, which Car2Go utilizes, where you can pick up and drop off a car anywhere in a home area. And there's dedicated space round-trip car sharing. Zipcar, among others, operate that type of car share. In order for a dedicated space round-trip car sharing system to flourish, it has been documented that they need the on-street space, mostly for visibility and flexibility for their customers. In Denver, when we introduced the car share program, we had both dedicated as well as point-to-point. What we found is members were members of both. They were members of a Zipcar or Enterprise as well as a Car2Go. By having multiple mobility options for members, they're able to go car light and car free. Right now, if it's just Car2Go, they have to make sure there's a Car2Go nearby. Car2Gos are just smart cars, so there's a little bit of limitation there. Our rule and regulation that we currently have and is being revised will max out the number of spaces that we dedicate on street. So between German Village, downtown, and Short North, we would dedicate no more than 30 car share spaces to any operator. So Zipcar is coming to the market, but there are others that have also shown interest. We are also requiring that only 25% of their fleet is on street. So we are making sure that most of their fleet is off street. To your point, we see a huge benefit to making sure these cars are in parking garages of the new multifamily units going up, new retail, new office uses. So we feel like it's a balance between offering some flexibility as well as visibility for these car share operators to dedicate on-street spaces, while also making sure that they're also off-street. I hope I touched on all the points to your question.
Yes, Council President Shannon Hardin.
Thank you, Chair. And I kind of have a follow-up question to President Pro Tem's question. Given the Smart Cities, Smart Columbus stated goals around electrification of vehicles, is there any value to asking our partners to work and to provide electric vehicles and be a part of the Smart Columbus goals and helping us to establish additional electric stations as well as part of this partnership, since it certainly would be beneficial both ways, I would assume, for us as the city to get more electric stations, but also to the car share to have a visible location on the streets.
Absolutely, Council President Hardin. We have been in talks with multiple car share operators who operate electric fleets. There's been challenges in the past with electric fleets. A couple of cities went that route, and it didn't work out as well as they planned. San Diego in particular, no discredit to them, but they laid out a completely EV fleet through Car2Go, and it did not work out, mostly based on the infrastructure. The infrastructure still wasn't there from the charging perspective. We have talked to Zipcar about that. We do know with car share, they will bring newer vehicles that are lower emission, so we're automatically getting that environmental benefit. We're working with other car share operators to bring them in the market through this policy that are looking at EV fleets and how can we partner with them to both get the vehicles here as well as the charging infrastructure. We in Public Service work closely with Smart Columbus on the EV initiative as well as others, so that's definitely in the back of our mind for sure. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from my colleagues? Any other testimony from our speakers this evening?
One more slide.
Oh, go
Sorry.
for it. See,
My apologies.
That's fine.
So the last slide is about reinvesting excess meter revenue into districts for mobility options. This is the creation of parking benefit districts. This code revision would authorize the creation of parking benefit districts. Specific districts would be established by ordinance. The Short North Parking Benefit District would be established this summer and is a key component of the Short North Parking Plan. These benefit districts can help provide financial support for mobility initiatives at a local level. So we are looking at this as we are raising meter rates, and we're not raising meter rates just to make a profit. We're raising meter rates to affect behavior change, to create some available parking spaces on the street. Once we cover our costs as a city through the implementation of technology as well as added staff, we would share back those revenues with these benefit districts for the sole purpose of adding mobility options. That could look like a late-night employee shuttle system. That could look like COTA discounted bus passes, validations for rideshare services, et cetera, et cetera. We think it's critical that, again, we provide as many mobility options to our residents so that we're not always defaulting to, I have to drive from point A to point B. That's what gets us into a little bit of trouble in these high-demand areas when it comes to parking. We need to have these additional tools. These tools cost money, and that's why we feel like sharing that excess revenue back with the neighborhoods is key. And with that, that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Council Pro Tem Cinziano.
Thank you, Chairman Remy. On the parking benefits district, you mentioned it's going to be approved this summer. What engagement with neighborhoods or community would you anticipate, or have you had experiences in the past?
So specifically to the Short North Parking Benefit District, which will be the first benefit district to be created, that was a key implementation item of the Short North Parking Plan. We had a robust outreach effort starting in February on the Short North Parking Plan. So there's been quite a bit of outreach through residents as well as businesses on the benefit district there. As we would look to establish additional benefit districts, they would be part of parking management plans. So as we move to look at the downtown area, German Village, Franklinton, et cetera, that would be a tool in the toolbox that we would present, and if constituents were favorable to that, then we would go down that path of establishing a benefit district. It would need to work for both parties. So we at the city need to cover our costs. If there's additional revenue to be had, which in Short North we certainly believe there will be, then we would enter into that agreement and then bring an ordinance forth to establish that benefit district.
So would that be presented to any civics or area commissions before it's brought forward? I don't think it's required, but just curious if that would be part of the envisioned process.
Absolutely, and that would be a requirement of our rule and regulation, that we engage with commissions and civic associations, and that they are on the committees that would decide how to spend those funds. And those are on currently on the website, our draft rules and regulations.
All right, with that, I will, we have a number of speaker slips here. Just a reminder that you will have 3 minutes to speak. I want to remind everybody that this is not a hearing about any one individual parking plan, specifically the Short North Parking Plan, but strictly about the parking services code revisions and the updates that concern the city at large. In fact, 98% of the current plan could be, the current proposed plan with the Short North Parking could be implemented today without the benefits of the dollars going back into the community. So that is the only relevant piece that, as it relates to a parking plan. Our first speaker this evening is Deborah Starr. Yep, if you just come forward to the podium, we welcome you to council chambers. Please state your name, address for the record, and any group or organization that you represent, if there is one. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Okay, my name's Deborah Starr. I live at 1332 Highland Street, Columbus, Ohio. I was told Thursday night at the garden meeting that I could not speak there, but I could speak here tonight, and it's about the parking plan. May I read my letter?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I am writing in regard to the Short North Parking Plan, which you plan to initiate November 2018. I live on Highland Street in Denison Place for over 40 years. My husband and I moved here to the city when the city was begging people to move to the Short North to help revitalize the area. At that time, we had to convince the banks to give us a mortgage since they felt it was a risky loan. It was risky to loan money in the area. In raising my family in this area, there were several challenges over the years. Parking during the day was a problem due to OSU students and staff not wanting to purchase parking passes on campus. I would come home with 3 small children, a week's worth of groceries, and no place closer to park than a block away from my home at times. I took on the city along with my neighbors, and we were awarded 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday parking permits. They would not allow us to have permits on Saturday because it might anger OSU football fans. Therefore, we could not leave our homes on football Saturdays if we wanted a parking spot when we returned home. In the beginning, the permits were $10. Now they are $25, including a visitor pass and permit. I have attended a number of your parking information meetings, been a member of your focus groups, and answered many of your surveys. Over the past month, I have talked with city council members and members of your staff. Your plan only creates more of a burden on homeowners who already are paying extremely high taxes to live in this area. We are being extremely inconvenienced while other members of the city have convenient parking in front of their homes. I feel the city wants to make businesses and patrons happy at the expense of area residents. Your guest plans have made it extremely difficult to have friends to our homes for parties and card clubs. For example, 8 friends for 4 hours at $6 per pass equals $48. It is totally unreasonable to have to pay, and it is not an option to ask your guests to pay. After 40 years of living in the Short North area, it has lost its charm, hominess, and love to me. I really see no reason to continue living in this area any longer.
Thank you very much, Ms. Starr, for coming down this evening. We appreciate it. I'll ask that Assistant Director Farron follow up with you. Appreciate your comments. Next, I'd like to call up Brenda Gischel to speak. If you'd come to the podium, welcome. Please state your name, any organization that you may be affiliated with for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Brenda Gischel. I represent Schumacher Place Civic Association. I am the president, and I have been the president since September of 17. In August of 2017, out of a need from my neighbors who have been inundated with development, and because of a wonderful presence of Nationwide Children's Hospital, the residents in the northeast quadrant of Schumacher Place have no place to park. They have a difficult time getting city services such as refuge pickup, and to have services done to their own home. They can't get trucks in there to repair a dishwasher or a washing machine. So at that time, we went through the old process. And up until December, we were collecting names. We needed 205 signatures, which would represent a 75% approval of the specific area. We're talking not even 6 streets, but they are directly affected by Children's Hospital. After not succeeding, we were going to talk with President Hardin, and he was promoted to president. So I went to an open service meeting with Councilmember Stinziano. He referred me to Councilmember Remy, and at that point, I was connected with Robert Farron. He has addressed the people in Schumacher Place. We are excited to be a part of it. I feel badly for Short North, but we have nothing. Children's Hospital has 8,000 people on staff and 10,000 people every day on site who love our free streets. And I understand that, but we need to work for the residents. Our streets are very small, our infrastructure is getting beat up, and we really would appreciate your support in allowing us to become a pilot program and allow parking in that northeast quadrant of Schumacher Place Civic Association. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gischel. Thank you. Our next speaker is Alexandra Slaymaker. If you'd please come forward and to the podium. We welcome you to council chambers. Thanks for coming. You have 3 minutes to address council.
So my name is Alex Slaymaker. I live at 415 North Front in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm here today to read a letter from Alex Fisher, CEO and president of the Columbus Partnership. President Hardin and members of council, our community is thriving. We're creating jobs. We're attracting new talent. We're welcoming more visitors than ever before. Construction cranes dot our skylines as we build up new, denser housing options nestled between new corporate houses, hotels, shopping, and leisure destinations. But with these successes come challenges. As a region, we expect to welcome 1 million additional residents to our community by 2050, a tremendous opportunity that comes with unique challenges. We're challenged to fit more people, driving more vehicles into the same amount of space, in a community that already has one of the country's highest rates of single occupancy vehicle commutes. While we welcome this growth, if it's not managed in new ways, it stands to tax our infrastructure and create congestion, threatening the livability of our city that made Columbus so special in the first place. The Columbus Partnership and the City of Columbus pursued the U.S. Department of Transportation's 2016 Smart Cities Challenge because we knew we had to develop in smarter ways to address the challenges ahead. Through Smart Columbus, we're rethinking the types of vehicles we rely on and the infrastructure systems that support them. The parking code revisions before you are aligned with our smarter thinking as a city, and on behalf of the Columbus Partnership, I extend my full support for them. The introduction of parking benefit districts and the dedicated shared services parking spots will help to expand the alternative ways that residents and visitors can move around our city. They will serve to lessen overall demand for parking, enabling continued growth. These policies pave the way for us to leverage new technologies and services to solve our urban challenges. They follow established best practices and also support the mobility innovation that we're hoping to inspire here. The proposals put forth by Robert Farron under the leadership of the Director Jennifer Gallagher and Councilmember Emmanuel Remy are smart ways to address the challenges we face today and will continue to face in the future if we don't act. I encourage you to join me in supporting their adoption. Respectfully, Alex Fisher. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Slaymaker. Council President Pro Tem.
Thank you, Chairman Remy, and it's not directed to you, but actually to Director Farron. Can you just explain how these benefit neighborhoods? We just heard this is updating, bringing us some best practice, given your experience in the different cities you lived. Can you just kind of lay that out in a little more simple terms, why these provisions are needed? It is beyond just the short north, but how this is going to improve our city and our neighborhoods.
Sure, absolutely. Allowing us to have more tools in the toolbox, particularly the overtime parking provision to allow us to install 2-hour time frames for businesses along business corridors, the creation of parking benefit districts to reinvest excess revenue back into neighborhoods, the ability to have flexibility in our permit program to think more holistically and not on a block-by-block situation, or as historically permit programs have been implemented, predominantly single-family next to one major traffic generator. Allowing ourselves the flexibility to implement these tools, we're going to be more holistic. We'll be able to look at parking as more of a system and not on a block-by-block approach. How can we look at parking as part of the transportation system? I'm a firm believer that we provide more transparency and more access to the community to use these tools to help with parking demand management. And critically important is that we think beyond parking and that we think about other mobility options. Car share in particular is going to help the individual who wants to go car light but just can't, because yes, we have transit, but do we have transit on every corner? No, most cities don't. By giving our residents mobility options, they're able to lower their cost of living. They're able to live in places that maybe they didn't think they could live before. And I think it has a triple bottom line, socially, environmentally, economically, of providing those options, helping our neighborhoods thrive. I'm a firm believer that if we continue status quo, centering everything around the single occupancy automobile, it's certainly not a very sustainable way to keep growing.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker this evening is Rory Krupp. Rory, if you come forward, welcome to council chambers. Please state your name and whatever organization you're with and for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thanks. My name is Rory Krupp, and I represent the Wyland Park Community Civic Association, and I live at 1356 Hamlet Street. I want to commend Robert Farron and Amanda Ford for their patience during this process, the wide variety of personalities and agendas, me included, so thanks. I also want to thank the city for implementing a low-income provision for qualified residents for permits. It helps a lot in my neighborhood, and we appreciate it. And the parking benefit district, which we think will improve our mobility options. As for the actual code changes, we are quite supportive in the Civic Association of the division of making a parking services division. The permit process, the petition process for permit parking is broken. In fact, it's never worked. So it just pits neighbors against each other and pushes the problem to the next block, and then in succession. So getting rid of that and having a more holistic approach, I think will help everyone. Making parking spaces from 23 to 20 feet can only help. We're supportive of that. And 1 car for 1 space. In our neighborhood, people will straddle spots, and by the time you're done, you've got 7 spots and 3 parked cars. So once again, we're supportive of that. We're also supportive of the moving vehicles 75 feet. This is another big thing in our area. We don't have a problem with abandoned cars as much as like students or other people who use it for long-term parking. And they'll move it 6 inches, and spring quarter, they'll take it home and then come back. So this will be another thing that will free up spots, and I think the more churn we get in parking spots, the better off we are. As far as cone changes, that's it. We're just looking forward to the future and evaluating it and working with the city some more. Thanks a lot.
Councilmember Brown?
Sir,
Mr. Krupp?
question.
Councilmember Brown has a question.
Everyone gets upset about Saturday afternoons involving Ohio State football. Wyland Park is very, very adjacent to that area. What are your thoughts with regards to the issue about parking as far as Ohio State football is concerned?
We get some parking, but it's 8 times a year at the most, so I guess we kind of roll with it. We're a little farther out than the core campus area, so we get some, but you've got to be pretty ambitious to walk for like 12 blocks with your cooler to the stadium and tailgate, so they do. And so, you know, yeah, but it's not, I don't hear a lot about it, so I wouldn't say it's a major problem, so we're used to it. Yeah, more or less, so.
Thank you very much,
All right,
Mr. Krupp.
thanks.
Appreciate your time. Our next speaker this evening is Marianne Lannon. Welcome to Council Chambers. Thank you for coming down. If you would, come to this podium and state your name and organization you represent, and you have 3 minutes.
My name's Mary Ann Lannon. I own a business in the Short North, The Lampshade. We're at 990 North High Street, and I'm just here in support of the code changes. I feel that modernizing and standardizing the code throughout the city, expanding the parking demand management toolbox, doing all the things that will modernize the code for the city, the mobility options, the reinvesting in the high demand areas, and the parking benefits district all are a plus. So I'm in support. I think it will benefit our businesses in the Short North as we modernize the area. It'll be great to have the parking improvements as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lanning, for coming down this evening. Our next speaker is Betsy Pandora. Betsy, welcome to Council Chambers. Welcome back.
Good evening, members of council. Thank you so very much for holding this hearing today. I'm Betsy Pandora, Executive Director of the Short North Alliance. Our offices are located at 21 East 5th Avenue. As an organization, we provide services to businesses and property owners in the Short North Arts District and work to nurture the Short North Arts District as a vibrant, creative, and inclusive community and leading arts destination. In my nearly 5-year tenure as leader of the organization, the perennial issue that has challenged nearly every single stakeholder that I have encountered in the Short North has been parking. I have been involved in literally thousands of hours of meetings where we have studied our parking issues, learned about the very nuanced needs of hundreds of individual stakeholders, and debated the best and most appropriate solutions. The City of Columbus has invested significantly in the process to address and improve the circumstances for parking and access in and around the Short North Arts District, and I'm happy to be here today to say that we are very much so on the right track with this. The code changes that the City Council is considering in today's hearing and at future meetings are critical to improving parking and access in the Short North Arts District for businesses and customers while protecting the adjacent residential community, which is critically important. Specifically, the code changes being considered here today will allow for increases in the quantity, convenience, and availability of customer and visitor parking, allow for more diverse parking and transit options for employees, visitors, and residents, allow for parking meter funds to be reinvested back into the district to enhance mobility options and communicate parking information more clearly, allow for better parking enforcement to ensure turnover and parking availability on our streets. On the whole, these changes and the proposed plan that accompanies them are a vast improvement to parking and access to the Short North Arts District. The Short North Arts District truly is the art and soul of Columbus. High Street alone employs roughly 10,000 people and welcomes over 3.5 million annual visitors to the city. And we need these changes to continue to be a successful economic and tourism generator for the city. While parking challenges have defined the Short North Arts District experience of the past, The code changes before you today will allow us to change that narrative and allow the arts, cultural, and small business community and the experiences our visitors have and the memories they make in the Short North Arts District and not parking to define the narrative of our future. We are grateful to the City of Columbus for the intensity with which they have studied and thoughtfully proposed plans and the innovative policy changes which enable a better future for the district. And we want to really thank Robert Farron, Assistant Director of the Columbus Department of Public Service, Amanda Ford, and Director Gallagher for all of the hard work that they have done on developing this, as well as you as council members who have attended so many meetings and have really stuck with us on this. Without reservation, the Short North Alliance is in support of these changes for code to parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pandora, for coming down. Our next speaker is Lisa Craig Morton. Lisa, if you'd come forward. Appreciate you coming down this evening. Welcome to Council Chambers. Please state your name and organization. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Lisa Craig Morton. I'm a resident and homeowner at 1149 Neal Avenue, and I own and operate a bed and breakfast at 1147 Neal Avenue, which is in our carriage house. I've lived in the Short North since 2004 and have worked in the area since 1984, and we've seen a lot of changes in that time. I wanted to express my support and approval of the changes and modifications to code and the creation of some new code relative to parking in our neighborhood. I think that these changes are going to give our community the tools that we need and the teeth to enforce a parking plan that is consistent and is not a patchwork of streets and blocks and neighborhoods pitting against one another, which is what we have right now. Councilmember Brown asked about OSU football parking, and as you can imagine, on Neal Avenue, as the other speaker from Highland Street stated, we often cannot leave our street, and if we ever want to have anyone over and it's a football weekend, it's just impossible, especially on game day. Ditto for Comfest and Gay Pride and the Doodah Parade and Red, White, and Boom. And so I am thrilled at the prospect of this plan, including Neal Avenue, and giving us a tool to have a little more equitable utilization of the parking space in front of our house. Another thing that we have recently experienced is an issue with OSU employees parking on our street in front of our house for long periods of time. Sometimes we've had nurses who are doing 12-hour shifts for 3 days in a row, and they come and park for 3 days in front of our house. So with the implementation of OSU's parking agenda in the last couple years, we've seen a lot of people who no longer want to pay to park in the designated areas on campus, and so now they're parking on our block for free. And because many of the streets and blocks around us have little patchworks of code where you can't park there, they all park on Neal Avenue. So that's created issues for us personally as residents, and it's also created issues for our business. So I just want to say that I approve of the changes that are being implemented or recommended tonight, and I think there'll be a great foundation for moving forward. I want to applaud you for bringing Robert Farron to town. He's been extremely knowledgeable. He's been very, very responsive. He's been very transparent, and it's great to have the creation of a dedicated department and a dedicated person to tackle this important issue. So thank you for allowing me time to speak.
One moment, please. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Since you brought up Ohio State again, the question, what role have they played in sense of communication with Ohio State about addressing the concerns? Certainly we want our nursing staff and medical staff to be able to have a place to park, but not necessarily on people's streets, in front of people's homes. Have they stepped up to the plate and said what they would or would not do to try to address that concern, and shuttling their personnel back to the hospital?
I have not taken that up specifically with the university. I haven't even tried. It's such a vast entity. But I've talked to some of the people, who park in front of our house, and it's people like nurse managers at the James, someone who's in charge of like all the nurses on 3 floors at the James Hospital. These aren't like hourly wage people. They're, management level people who've decided that they don't want to spend their personal money to park at the university. So I'm not aware that the university has done anything like the downtown districts are doing with, free CODA passes or mobility options like that. I'm not aware of any of those. I haven't personally tried to take it up with anyone at OSU, but it's a growing issue for us in the neighborhood on those streets that don't have any parking zoning.
I know a council member who might be able to speak to the issue, so thank you.
Oh, okay. Great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Assistant Director Farron, do you have anything to add to that? Okay. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Cleve Ricksecker from the Capitol Crossroads Special Improvement District. Mr. Ricksecker, welcome back to council. You please state your name and address for the record, and also you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Chairman Remy, Councilmember Brown, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm Cleve Ricksecker. I'm Executive Director of Capitol Crossroads Special Improvement District. I want to start off by answering a question. I think I know the answer to the question about Ohio State University staff. I believe the contract with the parking company in Ohio State prohibits the university from promoting options to driving. And so I think the university, under contract, can't tell its staff that there are options such as taking the bus or carpooling or other things. And I think that's a real problem. Students, of course, have the PASS program, but staff, as I understand it, are not permitted under contract to receive any information that would prevent them from driving and using the parking facilities at Ohio State University. I want to talk about the impact of these proposed changes on downtown. As you know, downtown has a significant parking problem, but the problem is too many cars. Since 1990, we've seen the number of single occupancy vehicles being used to commute to work going up and up and up. Among our peer cities, 20 or 25 peer cities, the only city that brings more cars into downtown per 100 workers is Indianapolis. So we have the second worst record in the country right now in terms of single occupancy commuting to work. And the result is increasing office vacancies, flat rents, higher parking rates, and financial stress among lower paid employees. What I love about this plan is this whole idea of the parking benefit district, because it allows for more creative problem solving. For us to try to solve the parking problem by building more parking in downtown, we'd have to build far in excess of 4,000 additional parking spaces. It's not going to happen. And so allowing neighborhoods like the downtown or the Short North to come up with more creative solutions, such as the downtown CPAS program, will go a long way toward actually solving the problem. The on-street parking issue is also problematic. People feed the meter all day. Short-term parking is not available for restaurants, for offices that have clients coming in. And so I really like the fact that feeding the meter will become a parking infraction. And like the other speakers, I've got to compliment Public Service, Robert Farron, and his Amanda Ford and the staff there. They've done a fabulous job. Taking my downtown hat off and putting my resident hat on. I live on First Avenue. I've been a resident of the Short North for 38 years. I've been extremely impressed with the planning that's been done for the Short North parking, and I'm completely supportive of what Public Service is doing here with the Short North as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ricksecker. We appreciate you coming down this evening. And our final speaker this evening is Nathan DeMark. Did I get that right? Hopefully I was close. All right. Welcome to council. Please step forward to the podium. You have 3 minutes to speak, and you can tell me how to say it properly.
Good evening. Nathan DeMars. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. I am a German Village resident. I'm also a Short North business owner. I own Pursuit at 937 North High Street. So I've been very involved in a lot of the Short North specific meetings over the last several months. I know this conversation is specific to code changes, so I won't talk about that more complicated issue, and I'm also no code expert. But my understanding is that what we're talking about here tonight is really going to help allow for creative solutions to a really complicated problem as our city is growing. And I think some of the things that I'm particularly excited about in supporting these changes are the ideas that there will be better enforcement, the idea that there will be better utilization of technology and data so that we can take the streets around us and and maximize the parking on those streets and really understand where the parking problems are so that we can address specific issues. And I think it's a very powerful tool to create a parking benefit district that allows us to get very creative about how my employees get to work, how my customers perceive the way the parking in the Short North is, and how we guide them to the places that we think it's best for them to be parking. So I think these changes allow for us to add some creative solutions beyond just simply parking spots and permits to maximize the spaces we have and take one small bite out of a challenging issue. So I appreciate the approach. I've sat in a lot of meetings where I'm at a table with residents, where I'm at a table with fellow business owners and community leaders. I know my perspective is one of many, maybe both a resident and a business owner, but I appreciate the complexity of a challenge like this. So I think these changes allow us to more effectively address the problem. So appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. DeMars. We appreciate you coming down this evening. Are there any other comments from my colleague, Councilmember Brown? Anybody from Public Service or Safety? Well, then, seeing none, again, I want to remind everyone that our target date for passage would be this next Monday, May 21st. Was read in, first read was this past Monday, the 14th. I'd like to thank Robert Farron and the Department of Public Service, Director Gallagher, of course, Amanda Ford, my council colleagues for attending tonight and all of their support throughout this process as we develop some modernization to our parking codes. Matt Erickson in the City Council Legislative Research Office, and of course my team, Jeffrey Carter and Lucy Frank, and most importantly, the community for your suggestions and feedback. Without that, we wouldn't be here today. So I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their busy schedule to come down to speak to this. We look forward to continuing the conversation and the good work that the Department of, hopefully the Department of Parking Services does in the future. Thank you very much, and that concludes our hearing on this issue.